Hello and welcome to this episode of Take Up and Read. My name is Joe Chrisman. I'm your host. I'm joined today by Jonathan Cruse. He is an OPC pastor at Community Presbyterian Church in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Jonathan is an author, a hymn writer, and most notably on his resume, I'm sure he would say, he is my friend. And so it's good to be joined by Jonathan. Jonathan, thanks so much for coming on.
Of course, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Pleasure to spend some time talking with you now officially for the podcast, since we've already been talking for a half hour. So
yeah. Yes, now that we've actually I wanted to start, Jonathan, talking about some of your books. I think this is your most recent book sitting next to me. Is this correct? This is the one that most recently came out?
That's right. Yep.
Now, I know I just saw, I logged on Facebook and saw that there's one coming out with PNR that just got posted.
Right. Just today. Just today we announced that. That's right.
So I want to talk about all that. How many books have you written at this point?
I believe 12.
I believe
13 or 12.
Like you don't have.
I guess it depends if you count co-authoring and.
Yeah. Right.
I edited a Puritan Treasures for Today. RHB has this little series. So I guess David Clarkson should get most of the credit for that book, but
your name's on the cover.
But my name has the word edited in front of. No, but and then it also depends if you're counting books that have come out yet or not. So
sure,
something in the 10 to 12 range.
Yeah. Now remind me, the book that I remember first hearing from you was What Happens When We Worship.
Mm-hmm.
That's from RHB. It seems like it's done very well. I know in our presbytery there are a number of brothers who have been tremendously blessed by it as a resource to hand out to people, especially post-COVID.
Wonderful.
Can you explain to me, was that the motivation of writing that book? Was it during the whole COVID time frame? Like, how did you come to say, I need to sit down and write a book about worship?
Yeah, no. The short answer is no to the COVID question, but it was before all of that. But it is interesting in terms of the timing of its release. So the desire for writing that book in particular started in seminary when I was sitting in a Sunday school class. So it's an interesting story to tell, but it's also somewhat embarrassing because it reveals my own ignorance of things. Sitting in a Sunday school class at the church we were attending, was a Dutch Reformed church, and the pastor was giving a Sunday school class on the Lord's Supper. So this would have been like within a few months of starting seminary, right? But I grew up in the church. I grew up in the OPC. I was an intern in the PCA during college, and then we're straight to seminary. So Reformed worship, Reformed theology is not like a new thing to me. This is the first time, obviously, studying it at a master's level, but it's not like a new thing. And he's talking about the Lord's Supper, and he makes a comment about how, the standard evangelical view of the Lord's Supper, and it's seeped into Reformed circles, is the Zwinglian memorialist view. And we don't believe in that. And he goes on and on. And I raised my hand, or maybe it was after the class, I went up to him. I said, but we do believe that, though. Like, that is what it is. And his answer was, your own confession doesn't teach that. Because again, I'm in a Dutch Reformed church, right? So he's three forms. Mm-hmm. Your own confession doesn't teach that. You grew up in this. This is not what you believe. And I thought, wait, I grew up in this and I don't even understand what he was describing about Christ's presence in the Lord's Supper. And I thought, boy, I wonder how many other people grow up in a Reformed church and have no idea what's actually taking place. And I'm not blaming the church necessarily that I grew up in. I'm just saying, like, I think because you're surrounded by it, you don't think about it too often. And so then you kind of come up with your own deductions about things, assumptions about things, and then they're never challenged really. And you just kind of go through life. So that was like this watershed moment where I thought, wait, there might be a lot more happen. Like, Christ is really here. Like, we're really feeding on Christ. And like, it's like this brand new idea. So that's a trajectory for me. The rest of, I already was interested in liturgy, writing hymns, things like that. Like, I was interested in worship, but that sent me on this trajectory of thinking about it, a new perspective of what supernatural realities are happening in the divine service, and how could that be explored and explained to people that either it's brand new to, or they aren't they aren't used to thinking about it critically because they've just kind of grown up in it. So that set me on this trajectory of thinking about worship, something I was already really interested in, from the angle of explaining it to people who grew up in it and never thought critically about it, or people that it was brand new to, Reformed worship.
Yeah.
And so that was at the start of seminary, and I remember sitting down in the library on my like last month or something in seminary 3 years later, and I wrote the introductory chapter to What Happens When We Worship. And like, I would really like to do this, write this book. Go into ministry, get a call to Michigan, move here, and it's the first Sunday school class I teach. And people there had almost identical reactions to me in the Sunday school class that I was in 4 years earlier, which is like, really? Like our whole lives this is the kind of thing that's happening? So that sort of confirmed that this is needed. And, I pursued writing that. But I thought that it was a sort of a big enough subject that it would be a difficult thing to get a publisher to be interested in a kind of a no-name newbie loser, which I still am, but somebody that they weren't familiar with in publishing that. So I put it on the back burner for a while, and actually the first book I ended up publishing was one on identity in Christ, and
right.
That was
RHB also.
Yeah, that was RHB, and so the Lord used that to sort of establish a relationship with the publisher, and after that come out and was received well, they said, "Do you have any other ideas that you'd like to work on?" And I was like, "Well, actually, there's this project that I've been very passionate about," and so that was the second book that I published. But the first kind of book project I started working on, and it was years in the making in that sense.
Yeah, and then providentially, I mean, I feel like when COVID happened, and you've got people who are starting to think through virtual church and all these kinds of things. So many people I know found that book and were like, "Oh, this is like getting after the substance," and it's accessible, which is, I think, part of not only the benefit of that book, but your writing as a whole is very accessible books. Very, we had Jason Alopoulos on. I feel like he writes a very similar way. Pastoral, very accessible. Writing it for the actual layperson in the pew, not for some dialogue partner that's out. And those books are good. Like, I'm not trying to.
Right. No, I write at a level that I can understand, something that would benefit me and bless me. And so, I'm grateful there are other people that can do that kind of other register of examination and interrogation and argumentation. But I'm very much kind of an average Joe in that sense. Hey, you should have called the podcast that Average Joes. That'd be cool.
There you go. I feel like I thought it's a movie Dodgeball or something, but
yeah, right. That's right. So, so the book comes out October 2020.
Okay.
And
how about that?
But totally written before any of this stuff. And I remember thinking both like, "Oh, this is really neat in God's providence to be thinking about this," and then also thinking, I wish I could go back and write a whole other chapter on the importance of in-person worship, which of course is implied throughout the whole book, but you didn't realize at the time that we were going to be fighting against, exclusively virtual worship. So that had nothing to do with my desire to write the book, but in God's timing, that was right at that kind of sweet spot. People were thinking about it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I want to start talking a little bit about your writing process. So, Jonathan, I think more than anyone I know, I mean, you mentioned you've worked on 12 books. There's more forthcoming. As I talk to you, it seems like as you're doing your work of ministry, you're laboring hard as a pastor, and you've shared a lot of your war stories. I know you are a good pastor, a good husband, a good dad. And you're working hard. You're doing this work in ministry to be writing for the purpose of sermons or Sunday school classes or small groups or whatnot. More than anyone I know, you're able to take that and say, could this be a benefit to people outside of even just my own church? Could this be a benefit to someone elsewhere through books or articles or whatnot? I see your name on articles all the time. I just saw a Ligonier one pop up on my email inbox. I'm just curious, like for you, what does it look like your inspiration of books? Is it like, I'm working on something in ministry, this is something right in front of me, and oh man, this might actually be a helpful book for someone? Like, it seems like you're always able to be working at multiple levels, which for me is something that I really admire, because I'm not that way. I'm not able to say, oh, I can take this and really, be able to work on it, again, to make it something that could have even a broader reach. I'm just curious, what does that look like for you to write a book, to take something that maybe you're already working on,
Mm-hmm.
and to reformat it in a way that could then be a blessing to, countless other individuals?
Mm-hmm. Well, you're very kind to sneak in there some compliments about my output. I I think that work work smart, not hard, is a part of it. Like, if I'm going to be writing a sermon series, why not see if it can turn into article? Maybe it was Joel Beakey. I got this advice secondhand, but I think it was from Beakey initially. Is you should never use anything once. You know, so if you do a Sunday school class, maybe it could turn into a series of articles, or a sermon series. Maybe it could be a book, or you write a Wednesday night devotional for a midweek gathering, and then you use it at the nursing home on Saturday morning. Whatever it is, just don't ever use anything once. So that's really smart. I love that. So that's part of it. But I have a couple of things that benefit me in being able to produce written material. One of them is that I love writing, and for some people it's a struggle. Like, writing is hard. It doesn't come to them naturally. They want to write, but it's like work. I've never felt like writing is work. So if you could go back to Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania in the late 90s, early 2000s, little Jonathan Cruse was writing fiction novels. Like, I had a couple notebooks. I would handwrite them, then I got a computer and I would type them up. So, like, in 6th grade, I had like 100-page fantasy novel that I wrote.
Are we ever going to see those? Are those ever going to come out?
Some of them are lost forever, and I actually would like to find them again. But so, I'm sure there was this period in my life where you asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would have said an author. Now I thought something like more like a C.S. Lewis or something like that. Like I really was into fiction, fantasy, J.K. Rowling or something like that. I had no idea I'd be writing Christian living books or theology books. So I love writing. I like writing, and it comes naturally to me. So that helps. I studied it also in college. I have a minor in creative writing. That helps. For my sermons, some people outline or extemporaneous preaching, or just take up notes, but I manuscript, again, because writing comes naturally to me. So for some of my books that have been sermon series, which, like my book on Christian identity, or the Fruit of the Spirit, or the Psalms book that you mentioned earlier, they're like 70% done just when I preach the sermons. I don't preach them with a view to publishing them, but afterwards, if I think, like, I wonder if this subject could be helpful, I don't have to do a lot of work to turn it into book form, just because of the process that I'm already implementing. So if people are out there and they want to write a book, pastors out there, they want to write a book, and you don't manuscript your sermons, don't start just so you can write a book.
Sure.
Like, again, it's just in God's providence. This is something I'm already doing, and it helps me in that process. Yeah. So did that answer some of the questions? Some of the questions you're after?
I appreciate the qualifier, the concern to say, hey, don't start doing this just so that someday I can, publish books.
Right. Yeah.
Do XZ. But it's fine. I was just at a preaching workshop with Kevin DeYoung with Coram Deo a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. John Piper.
He does kind of like a outline format, but it's like these little short couple, like a paragraph, and then it's a break, and then it's like a short paragraph, break, and then so it's kind of like a mix between manuscript and notes or outline. And he was sharing how whenever he wants to, take a sermon and do whatever, it's not as easy as just going from manuscript into that. And so I think, regardless of your process, you probably can learn the principle you just outlined, which is to use everything more than once, to try to say, if there's a way to use this in a way that makes sense, like it's not it's not contrived. You're not just trying to force it to do it at any cost, but really to say you've labored hard, or you should have labored hard over writing that sermon, or a small group study, or a Sunday school class, or whatnot. Like, let's use that labor well.
And I think it actually encourages better work if you go into it thinking, I'm going to use this
Yeah.
multiple times, right? So if it's like, oh, I just got to throw together some youth talk on Friday night, and that's all it is in your mind. First of all, that deserves work, but you could see how someone would be if you're in a pinch, you're like, I'm just gonna wing it or whatever.
Yep.
But if you say like, I want this to be not only useful for them, but maybe I could turn into, like I mentioned, like a talk for a nursing home, or maybe there's a youth gathering, like a youth conference in your presbytery that you could use it for next year even.
Yep.
You want to put as much work into it now so that in a year when you look at it, you've got you have the resources you need. It's not just kind of some paltry, pathetic, some notes that you've just thrown in that a year later you're like, I have no idea what I was saying, what this is. It's an encouragement to work diligently on everything you do, and then find ways to bless as many of God's people as you can with it.
Yeah, that's great. So let's just say you say, hey, you take your volume with Banner of Truth, Character of Christ. You're looking at Fruit of the Spirit, and you are saying, okay, I've worked on this in the church, but now I think this might be a really useful, and for the record, I think that's one of, if not your best books.
Thank you.
So what does that look like? Is it more editing than anything, or is there a robust is not the right word. It sets you up to say, no, it's not robust. Is there a process? How much time does it take? Or is this something you're doing a little bit at a time? Or do you like sit down and say, okay, I've got all of, next week, I'm going to sit down and add to this? Because I feel like a lot of guys I know who would otherwise like to write books, we've gone to class with some of them.
Yeah.
Say they find it difficult to figure out like when to do it and how to do it.
Yeah.
And so what does your process look like?
I know. I honestly hate this question. It's a good question. I just hate answering it, I should say. I hate answering this question because I don't feel like I have a very edifying response to it. Part of it I set up earlier in that writing comes naturally to me. So I edit as I write, even for a sermon that I'm doing, not always as well as I should, but I like to go through and not so much throw any like all the words on a page and then fix it up, but like I like each paragraph to be what it's meant to be and then move on to the next paragraph. So as I'm looking at something turning into a book project, it's probably already pretty neat and tidy in that sense. But then you're going to need to take out references to your particular congregation, applications that might only apply to the church. There's certain stylistic things that need to change. Sure. And again, I have fun doing that. So it's easy for me to find time for something I enjoy doing. I do not, as a general rule, I don't allow writing projects to be part of like my work week.
Sure.
That's not always true. I said as a general rule. So, what would be a good example? Okay, so I had a book come out with 10 of those, 10 publishing. It was a Christmas devotional where I kind of wrote a little page reflection on the theology of Christmas hymns. That was just a total fun project for me. I would do that like at night after the kids went to bed, right? Like it's just fun. I would just find time for it, and I wouldn't take up time in my work week from sermon prep, visiting with people, or whatever else to do that kind of thing. And I think that's the hardest part about writing for a lot of people is where do you find the time? Because for some guys, you need to take a day off of your week or a week off of your month to focus on a writing project. And at times that might be appropriate,
Sure.
But
I also think there's to be able to kind of continuously, faithfully plod and do something like, let's just say it would take, 3 solid days of unbroken work to do a project that you're working on or something like that, perhaps. But to be able to say, I'm going to do it an hour and a half every night after the kids go to sleep, but it's going to take me, a couple of weeks, if not
Yeah,
longer.
right.
I think
Yeah.
that is a discipline that is not, it's not natural for a lot of people. Like it's easy to start off with an excitement of I'm working on this thing, but if I'm just going a few days, all of a sudden maybe kids are sick, kids aren't sleeping well,
Hmm.
whatever it may be, it can fall off very easily. And so I think
Yeah,
that is
and
discipline and a skill that you have clearly cultivated, which is also admirable. It's something that is something that I would myself hope to grow in, but I'm sure a lot of guys would say, man, if I could more continuously do that, like I might be more able to steward my writing.
yeah, perhaps, and perhaps that's what the Lord is asking of some guys. Whereas I also just want to say it's okay if you can't write, like, or you don't find the time for it, or you
Or,
can't make that discipline happen, because I am certain so many other things that you can do that the Lord's calling you to do. Like, that's why I just try to emphasize there's something that's just natural about it. That
yeah,
something I love that um, I don't want people to think, oh, he works so hard, or he's super uber gifted, or he's disciplined. I'm sure there's aspects of all of that, but like some people just are gifted in writing, some people aren't, and that's okay. That is okay.
yeah.
I was thinking yesterday, looking at some stuff for our presbytery, and one of my best friends at the presbytery, he created this. Are you going to be at Twin Lakes this year?
I will be.
I'll introduce. I'm bringing this friend with me,
Excellent.
so I'll introduce you to him. He wrote up this proposal to create a new committee, and it was like a 5-page proposal, and it was so articulate and clearly argued about why this committee needs to exist, and in terms of BCO stuff, in terms of workflow. Anyways, I was like, I could never have just thought about that. Like the kind of administrative mind that he has is something I don't have. And I could have spent 20 hours putting that proposal together. That would not have been 20 hours well spent of my time.
Yeah.
But like, I'm so glad the Lord has gifted him in that way, and he's there doing that. I don't know if he wants to write books, by the way, or if he will. That's neither here nor there. I'm just saying, like, I can do that, and that's okay that I can't do that.
Yeah.
But I can turn a sermon series into a book, like, so there are things that people can do, and I love listening to like podcasts with other writers and see what their process is. And there are some things that maybe people can implement, and that will make them better writers. But there's some people just that won't work, and they can't, and it's okay.
Well, I think that goes back to your principle of like you're working hard so you can use things more than once so that they can be stewarded well. But it's not that I'm doing this thing so that I can write a book, or I'm doing this so that it becomes XYZ, because you're doing it because it's what's in front of you.
Yeah. So I think maybe you had a question in there that got lost, or an answer that got lost. So, like, what's my process in terms of thinking, should this be a book or not? It always starts though with, what do I need and what do my people need?
Yeah.
Like, I wrote the book on worship, like I said, like, because 5 years earlier I kind of had that like light bulb moment, and then taught a Sunday school class, and they're all having light bulb moments. So then later I go, maybe this could be something. Uh, and I wrote my book on identity with Christ, because that was something I really struggled with. Was where's my worth, where's my value, and it's in Christ. It's not in anything of my own. It's not in what I accomplish, what I do, the friends I have, the accolades I get, anything like that. And I needed to hear that. And then as I'm ministering with people, it's like there's just this barrage of identity issues coming at them at work and at school. And it's like, okay, my people need this. So I think a pastor always has to be thinking that first and foremost. You think that every time you're deciding what's your next sermon series, right? Like, what do my people need to hear? So I've never, and I hope this will always be true, I pray that it would be true, I've never foisted a sermon series on my people because there was a book I wanted to write.
Yeah.
I'm sure that has probably been a that has been a temptation. I'm sure it will be a temptation in the future. But every book that I've written that was a sermon series started because this is something I think our people really need to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course,
great.
80% of my sermon series aren't books, because 80% of the things my people need to hear, I'm like, I don't think the rest of the world needed to hear that, or at least the way I said it, right?
Right. Right. But you're still bringing the level of discipline, work to make the labors you're doing, steward them well so that later on down the road, whether it's a book or whether it's just simply you're better for having done a more rigorous study engagement. You mentioned kind of the youth talk or this, busy weeks coming up. You've got to lead a small group through the next chapter of whatever book you're working through. And you say, I know the chapter well, maybe I'm just going to kind of go in and lead the discussion, but you say, no, I'm going to stop and take the time to really write something up that's really well thought through, well done. And then it's in the bank and it's something that you can draw from later on.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. It's in the bank. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an investment into the future ministry, whatever that may be. And we had Jason Halopoulos on, and it was encouraging to hear both of you have similar ideas of, a lot of your books come out of the ministry you're doing rather than the book is some kind of, achievement to aspire to as like, this is what makes me a good pastor is if I'm writing books. And even your encouragement to a lot of brothers who say, most of us aren't going to write books, and that's okay. It's okay to focus on our ministry and to be doing what we are gifted at and what comes naturally to us. But I think it's encouraging to see, and I'm just intrigued to always hear guys' process and to hear your own process of how you're really working hard to make the most of all the time you're using, the efforts you're giving. I think it's the word that comes to mind is you're stewarding things well. I'm really encouraged by that.
Thank you. Yeah. I hope that's true.
Yeah. So one thing that people might not know that you have written, I know a lot of the people who know you well know this, but that you are actually a hymn writer also. So you've written many hymns, some of which are in the Trinity Psalter hymnal. I know that to be sure.
You have one on hand that we could look at? Do you have a Trinity Psalter hymnal that we can see?
I just
look at that. Look how beautiful that is.
I just so happen to have this.
This is a time for a plug.
This is a time for a plug. So if anyone wants just an absolute gorgeous version of the Trinity Psalter hymnal, maybe your church uses it as a pastor. I love having something that's leather bound, feels good in the hand. It's my hymnal. I can add notes or whatever I want to do, extra bookmarks and whatnot, mark it up, and it's going to last my lifetime. My good friend David over at Cherry Hill Bibles, you can look up Cherry Hill Bibles online. He's not giving me anything, paying. David's just a good friend, and I like plugging his work because he does excellent leather work. He takes these and he custom rebinds them. So if you want a good Trinity Psalter hymnal, you can do that. But more than anything, more than the leather outside of it, the content inside of it is gold. And so, Jonathan, you've written a couple of hymns.
It really does sound like that was a pre-written, ad.
It's like someone handed me the piece of paper. They're like, and now for our sponsor, who's producing.
Yeah, right.
Hey, David, if you want to sponsor the show, I'm totally open to such a concept. But can you just explain to me, like, how did you get into writing hymns, and what does that even look like? I mean, obviously that requires you to not only be gifted in terms of writing, just using language, but also in terms of music. You have to be able to engage musically to some extent, right?
To some extent, although I want to underscore that I do not write the music to the hymn. So when you say I'm a hymn writer, I've written the words or the texts or the lyrics to a bunch of hymns, but I always then give them off to very talented people who have degrees in things like music theory and music composition who write the music. So
sure, but you're
right. You need to have a sort of musicality and or at least an understanding of poetry. Sure.
Right. Yeah. So then explain to me, how'd you get into it? And then what is it like? Just take me through a hymn, and you start with an idea, you start with a concept, or is it some inspired from another hymn or another poem you've read? And how do you go about bringing that to the point where, man, now there's a product and now we can corporately as a church on the Lord's Day by singing this truth that Jonathan has worked hard to formulate for us.
Yeah. So I started in, I grew up in a home that loved hymns, sang hymns all the time. So that's part of it. But then in college, I started writing them. I was inspired by a minister of music or director of music at the church I was attending who was into composing and had done that kind of thing with a number of pastors previously. And so I sort of was asking him a lot of questions about that process. And he said, Here, I'll tell you what, like you keep trying to write him, and if you ever write one that's good enough, I'll set it to music. And that was like a great motivator for me. So that's what started it off. Really inspired by the hymns of Eric Alexander, who's was a Scottish minister for many decades. And I think the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals still sells that. He has a booklet on hymns called Hymns of Prayer, so I commend that. And yeah, so how do you do it? Boy, you work hard at it. It can be helpful, maybe someone who's never written a hymn before, is you pick a hymn that you know, and like a tune that you know, and then you try to set your words to it. I don't actually like writing poetry, generally speaking, but hymnody has a lot of guardrails, right? It has a consistent meter, there's consistent theme. So I feel like it's just a good way to be creative enough for somebody who's not quite creative enough. You know what I mean? Like, so sometimes, yeah, there'll just be for me, it's often is just a devotional exercise. It's something I'll think on for weeks, even kind of in the back of my mind, worry at a particular theme or a lyric, and until it's right. And a lot of times nothing comes of it, but it's good for me. And a number of times I've taken, or I've tried to write hymns. I've set out to write a hymn based on maybe a passage or a theme that would coincide with what what I'm preaching on at church, so that there would be a hymn to go with a sermon series. So I've done that a few times, but often it's just something that will kind of arise out of a devotional reflection, and is a good exercise in my own kind of I don't know if you want to call it spirituality or piety, just a devotional exercise.
That's great. That's wonderful. So I want to play a game with you, and we do this with all of our guests. We like to play a game that's tied to something that's kind of particular about them. So because you've written hymns, I thought it'd be fun to ask a couple of favorite hymn questions. So my thinking is we'll go through kind of types of hymn, and then you give me a couple that are some of your favorites. I'm not going to put you on the spot of it has to be the singular favorite hymn, because that too much pressure.
Now, are you going to give any of your answers to these?
I might. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see how I feel. I'm the one who's in the driver's seat, so
you're the host. You can do whatever you want.
Go. Give me one of your favorite all-time just Trinitarian hymns, focusing on the Trinity.
Holy, holy, holy.
That's mine too. How about a hymn?
Also one of the greatest openers of all time. Like, that's my Sunday morning first hymn out the gate. Holy, holy, holy.
Yeah, you gotta be careful that's not overused, right?
Yeah, no. Yeah, so I don't know about you. We keep a spreadsheet at church, so I can really easily see what we've done and what we've overdone, and so I have an 8-year-old Google Doc that's going now. It's yeah.
You definitely, it's fun as you're going through. You're like, man, I can see which hymns are not only my favorite, but the congregation's favorites, right?
Yeah.
So the ones that are the most impactful and the best. But when they're so substantive, like holy, 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 I'm like, I don't mind. Like if it gets
sure.
use it.
No. I make sure that if I'm picking the liturgy, we never sing that one in the evening. I don't like singing early in the morning when it's 6 o'clock at night. So.
That's the level of thoughtfulness that your congregation is getting. That is just.
Well, I don't know if they care about it, but that's something I'm like, I can't sing early in the morning. Our song will rise to thee if it's 6 p.m.
There you go. How about a hymn or two that you would deal like? I love. This is a tangent. Lig Duncan always says you want to be singing the kinds of stuff in church that your people can sing on their deathbed.
Oh, yeah.
You want to equip them with those words. And so if you're thinking through what are some songs, some hymns on suffering that you would want to be able to give your people, what are some of your favorites?
Okay, so my favorite right now is actually so it's a hymn called Whate'er My God Ordains Is Right.
Excellent.
Which is in the Trinity Psalter hymnal and in the Trinity hymnal and stuff. But my favorite right now is a version of that that's a different translation, and that's called "What God Ordains Is Always Good." So it's the same German hymn, but two different English versions of it. And so here's another plug: you should YouTube Josh Bowder, "What God Ordains Is Always Good," and his arrangement of that's amazing. So Josh is a composer from Minneapolis who's become one of my best friends. I heard this Second Prez in Colombia was doing this arrangement, and they put out an album, and I just kept listening to this arrangement over and over and over again. It's so beautiful. And because it was a new translation or a different translation that I was used to, it's kind of like a fresh concept to me. But the tune was just beautiful. So I did this like really nerdy fanboy thing I've never done. I found the composer, I found his website, and emailed him. I was like, hey, I like your hymn, and I write hymns. Maybe we could write hymns together. And he wrote back right away, and he's like, that would be awesome. So he and I have written like 15 hymns together since then. And I'm going to be going out to his church to do a conference in a couple weeks, and he comes out once a year and leads a Reformation hymn festival at our church.
How about that?
We get an orchestra and brass, and we'll have a night of like 25 hymns, and people come. So anyway, so that's you have to look up the lyrics and his rendition of "What God Ordains Is Always Good." It's very moving. Another one, Suffering. I asked the Lord that I might grow. Right, that's a great John Newton one. Praying for sanctification, not realizing it would come through the lens of, through the crucible of tribulation and suffering. And probably "Abide with Me" would be another good one.
A good one. Yeah, I'd add to it. It as well is a great one.
Of course, yeah.
Love it as well. I also really love "Oh Father, You Are Sovereign."
Yeah, we just sang that the other week.
Margaret Clarkson. Yeah, and she's got that line.
Yeah. The God of Human Pain.
The Lord of Human Pain, transmuted earthly sorrows for gold of heavenly gain.
Heavenly gain. Yeah, right. I know. It's a really arresting line. That is. Yeah.
Yeah, you start tearing up when it comes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely great. Okay, then let's go to how about in the area of soteriology? Okay, salvation. Okay. Give me one or two hymns that are
easy. That one's easy. It's got to be "How Sweet and Awesome."
Okay.
So just "Why was I made to hear your voice and enter when there's room, when thousands make a wretched choice and rather starve than come."
I love it.
And it was the same love that spread the feast that sweetly drew us in, else we had still refused to taste and perish in our sin. That idea of, if it wasn't God's love, I would have refused to taste. And you just think, you can't imagine your life without the gift of salvation. Right. And yet, if God hadn't brought me to it, I wouldn't want it. And
right.
Yeah. That's we sang that in my ordination. So that's definitely, it's one of my favorites in general. Yeah. But I find that one can work for so many things. Definitely salvation by grace, election, the Lord's Supper. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love, with salvation, you could go so many different angles with it. I love, I just had it in my head. Oh, "There is a fountain filled with blood" is one of my favorites. And also because of the backstory of Cooper, and it's just, what a wonderful hymn.
Yeah. So that's definitely one of my top 5 all-time favorite hymns. So much so that we named our son after him. So
that is when you posted the announcement of his birth.
Yeah, Caleb Cooper. Yeah.
I'm like, everyone's gonna think it's Cowper and it's like some family name. I'm like, but I know what's going on here. I felt like I was on the inside. So
yeah.
But I also love "Come Thou Fount" is a great. You're talking about "Prone to wander, Lord, I feel the God I love. Here's my heart, take and seal it, seal for the courts above." I feel like that. When you get to let your goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. I feel like the church just sings a little louder because everyone in the room knows exactly what it feels like. So, okay. And then how about
the story about the guy who wrote that? I hope it's apocryphal, but I don't think it is. But that he actually walked away from the faith, and
yes, I have heard this.
Yeah, where he's like riding in a train next to someone who was reading it or singing it or something, and he said, "I'm the wretched man who wrote that hymn, and would to God that I could believe the words I once penned," or something like that. He was, I don't know if he apostatized or if he was just struggling with doubt or something, but it was a very, really kind of heartbreaking story.
Oh, well, on a not heartbreaking story,
sorry,
light and bright. Let's talk about, how about maybe 2 hymns, Christmas hymns, and this is hard because they're all so, like, so many of them are so good.
Yeah.
If you picked,
The classic would be Hark the Herald Angels Sing. You know, Wesley's theology there is so good. Another maybe less well known, also in our hymnals though, is Thou Who Is Rich Beyond All Splendor. Do you know that one? Frank Houghton.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one of my all time favorites.
Yep. Yeah. I like Joy of the World a lot. That's like every Christmas season. I'm tempted to play that every week. I find that very helpful. I also really love Come Thou Long Expected Jesus.
To the Heiferdal tune.
I mean, maybe, yes.
Yeah. Like Jesus, what a friend for sinners. Dun, 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 dun.
Yep.
Yeah.
So those are some good ones. I mean, there's so many good ones. I absolutely love. I love. It's really more of, it was a Longsworth poem.
Okay.
That turned into a song now. And it's popularized. I mean, there's some popular Christian CCM artists who sing versions of it, but I Heard the Bells.
And it's like 12 verses long.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That when it's done, when I was pastoring in Chicago, we were blessed. A good friend, John, was our kind of music director, and he's a professional opera singer. Like, he's a trained opera singer, very gifted pianist. Like, and so we were in this old Lutheran cathedral building in Chicago, and he is able, like, to literally move the mic away and, like, just with his voice and playing piano, sing that, and it was so
filled the whole space. I'm sure
it was incredible. So big fan of that. Okay, then last but not least, what I'd like to talk to you about, Jonathan, is we like to just ask every single guy who comes on here. We've talked about writing, we've talked about hymns, we've talked about all these kinds of things, the books you've written, but we also like to just talk about the books you're reading. And so the two different avenues we'll go are books you're currently reading,
okay,
just to see what you're reading, but then that have been the most impactful, and that's where I want to start. Can you just start with, give me a few, 3 or 4 books that when you look back over your life, your ministry, these have been some of the most formational, impactful books on Jonathan. And I'll make the disclaimer for all of our viewers that just because you're recommending this book or putting this book out there doesn't mean that
you're recommending it.
Yes. It doesn't mean that you are saying it's the best book of all time, or even that you would necessarily recommend it to every person listening as being something they should go out and go get. But it's just to say, these are the books that have been the most formational in my life. They've had a good impact on me. What would you say are some of the most impactful books?
I mean, I knew this question was coming, so I don't know why I'm feeling like I'm blanking. But, you know, as soon as you put that most qualifier, it's like you feel like you have to give a really profound answer. Let me start more recently than earlier. So I can think of a book in the last 10 years that's been really formative, and that's, no surprise, The Whole Christ by Ferguson.
Well, mine as well. Excellent book.
So that's, I really truly believe that in 100 years that will be one of the standouts from this generation that people are still reading, you know. So that's been so good for my soul, and I've read it a few times, and every time I do, I feel like I'm a better preacher for a little bit after, you know, like it gives me a good course corrective that I need that more often. Packer's Sovereignty and Evangelism and the Sovereignty of God, I've read in high school, and that was like the first time I ever considered some of those kind of bigger concepts or their implications. Again, I grew up in a home that like kind of just assumed this stuff, and I remember using that in conversations with people. That one stands out. Probably also I would want to mention The Prodigal God, Tim Keller, Prodigal God. I read that first year in college, and I think the Lord really used that to awaken a genuine spiritual commitment in my life to follow more firmly after him. So those come to mind. Yeah,
that's great. One book I'll throw out there.
That was influential in my life.
Yes, I'm going to throw out a book that's. Now you mentioned The Whole Christ, and we did an event for our church plant here in Lombard where I came up with this idea. I'm like, I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna see if only two people show up, whatever. But like the whole church turned out, which was we did like a white elephant event. So come over to our house. It's a white elephant gift, but everyone brings a book. And the key was you have to approve the book with me prior to the event. Like you have to email me and say, here's the book.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want anything weird popping up. But it was such a wonderful time to be able to talk books, engage in books, and people were trying to steal the best books. And I brought The Whole Christ by Sinclair Ferguson. And when it came up, I found a lot of people just didn't know about it. And it was one of those moments of like, man, this book needs to get out there in terms of just more and more lay people need to hear about.
Lay people, right? Yeah. So my wife just did a Bible study or book study with like 6 other women at church through The Whole Christ, and none of them knew of it.
Right.
And they all just were like, that was good for us because it stretched us. You know, they wanted that. This is their first in this new book study they're doing. The idea is we want to read theology that's just up a level of maybe your standard woman's book study, right? So that was the first one they did. Right now they're doing Richard Sibb's The Bruised Reed. Excellent. I love this. I'm like, you guys rock. You're awesome. So they loved it because it stretched them. And certain chapters were hard, but they said by the end of it, it was just so good for their soul.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like we need to get that in the hands of more people.
Right.
I want to mention one other influential book that wasn't written in the last 50 years since I mentioned mostly new ones. Thomas Watson, The Godly Man's Picture.
Sure. Excellent book.
Or anything by Thomas Watson.
Yes. I was about
Why
to
is
say,
he so good? Why is he so good?
You're right. Everything he writes is gold. It really is. And if you have sermons of his, like if you have some of those, like Soli Deo Gloria put out like different volumes that have just like collections of his sermons, they're so rich. They're so wonderful.
I can't write an entire book that is half as good as one of his sentences.
Yeah.
So, but that was a really good book for me to read, The Godly Man's Picture.
Here's another book that I'll throw out there in terms of, so this is why I was getting, not a book that's been impactful in your life, but you mentioned kind of book in the past, 10 to 20 years. And this one's even newer than The Whole Christ, but Crossway publishes it. It's a paperback, Craig Troxel, With All Your Heart. That book is fantastic. Every chapter in that book is worth the price of the book alone.
Yep.
So highly recommend.
You need to have Craig on the show.
I would love to have Craig on the show. I would absolutely love to talk to Craig for so many reasons. But
yeah, were you at Twin Lakes the year he was the speaker?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah, neither was I. I really regret it. But I was just a couple weeks ago. I was preaching at his church and looking out and seeing him in the in the congregation, thinking, why are you not up here? Why I don't want to hear me preaching right now. But he's been overseeing a vacancy at a church in California, so he's a professor out there, and so he preaches every Sunday evening. They're always trying to get people in the morning to help him out. So we were in town, and that's why I was preaching. But all I thought was, I just want to be hearing you.
Can we?
Yeah, very good.
Can I sit down?
Yeah, please. Yes, that book. I would agree. I would put that one up there. There's another one, or another recent one that kind of is similar in my mind in terms of like the impact it had on me and kind of the tone of it, and that's John T. Rhodes' Man of Sorrows, King of Glory.
Okay.
About are you familiar with that book?
I know what it is. I haven't read it.
Yeah. Actually, I have it right here. See if I can. Actually, somebody was asking me recently what are books that meant a lot to you, so I should have just looked at this pile I had. So we got this one, of course.
Classic.
Yeah, but here's this book.
Yes.
It is a really interesting look at Christology and the humiliation and exaltation of Christ in just 10 chapters.
Yeah, I just had a good friend, my guy in my cohort, read that not about a year or two ago and said it was profound.
It's really good. Yeah. And maybe it came out the same time as the Troxel book. I don't know. But in my mind, I always associate those two, or I read them at the same time. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very good.
So what are some books you're reading currently? I mean, it's February 2025 at the time of this recording. None of these are recommendations. It's just what are you currently in?
Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I'm sure that John T was always hoping that would quickly follow after recommendation of his book, is Let's
Yes.
Talk About Harry Potter. So we were talking about my son reading those, or reading them to my son. As a time my wife and I both love Harry Potter. And so we're like, well, we need to read them again and kind of see, like, look at it again. So I started the first one, like, yeah, I think he could probably handle this, or maybe we'll wait until he turns his 7th birthday is coming up in the summer. So, but then we just kept reading them. And so she has her copy, I have my copy, and we read them together. And then when we finish it, we watch the movie. That's been kind of a fun thing. I'm reading a book on the Pacific Theater in World War II called Pacific Crucible, recommended by a friend. Just started that one. I'm reading Colin Hansen's spiritual biography of Tim Keller, or intellectual biography, whatever you call that. And I just finished. Do you like Eric Larson's stuff? Yeah, I thought you and I talked about him maybe.
Yeah, I love Eric Larson.
So I just finished The Demon of Unrest, the new one about Fort Sumter.
It's sent out there right now. I've been meaning to get to it.
You haven't read it yet? I think it's my favorite of his that I've read. I haven't read all of his. I've read maybe 4 or 5 of his, but I really liked it. I really enjoyed it.
Love to see. Splendid in the Vial is my favorite. I mean, I'm also biased because I'm a Churchill. Like I read everything Churchill I can get my hand.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that about you. Yeah.
But Eric Larson's got such a great way of taking history and storytelling.
He makes it like it's like you're on the edge of your seat, like watching a drama on primetime or something. It's really good. Yeah. So I liked Devil in the White City, Splendid in the Vial, Thunderstruck, and this one. So I guess I've read 4 of his, and it's very good.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so that's what I'm reading right now.
Nice. Do you find yourself, like, are there particular genres or areas of reading that you find yourself, like, obviously I think for a lot of us, like, theology is what we like to read. Like, we enjoy reading theology, Christian, like, and so I find myself reading a lot of it just for my own soul and by desire. But then I find there are definite genre areas I like to read just for the purpose of reading. So I love reading American history. I love reading anything on Churchill. I love reading books on economics and business because I was a former major and business guy. So there's definitely there are areas I like to read. Do you find there's any areas you particularly drawn to?
American history would definitely be one, or just history in general. I guess a good history book.
There you go.
I really like. I'm blanking on his name. David Gran, I think. So he did The Lost City of Z, Killers of the Flower Moon, and his latest one was called The Wager, about a shipwreck in the 1600s.
Oh, I know about The Wager. Yeah, I flipped through that one.
So only I guess the Killers of the Flower Moon was American history, but it's similar to Eric Larson. I really like being able to dive into a particular chapter of the past and kind of immersing yourself in it and seeing what people thought back then and how they lived, and if there's a mystery or some kind of crisis that's in there too, all the better.
Right. Well, I found also, you mentioned Eric Larson. I find myself in every genre. So theology works the same way. Like you find authors that are particularly they're very gifted at writing and being able to connect with you and captivate you. And I find myself finding these authors where I'm like, if he writes it, I kind of want to read it because it's like if Eric Larson writes something, and
doesn't matter what, you'll read it.
Good. I feel that way about when Kevin DeYoung puts out a book. I'm like, I know I'm going to buy it. I think.
Yeah, I guess Kevin's okay. He's pretty good.
Yes.
Did you see that Daily Doctrine sold out immediately? Its first print.
Yep.
Can't believe it.
Do you have it? Have you read through it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I haven't read through it. My wife is reading it with her devotion, so she's doing it day by day. I've used it as I'm teaching a Sunday school class on what we call it, Theology for Life or something, and it came out 2 months into it, and then I've been using it whenever loci I'm in. I check his chapter, and I'm like, I think maybe I'll just take this up and read it. It's so good.
Yeah. I mean, I've given it to a handful of people, and I've said you can do it devotionally if you want to, but you can also this is an accessible systematic theology that you could just read cover to cover.
Yeah.
And like, you're going to find this really. So I had a guy just recently message me saying, this is like, I can hang with this. Like I can.
Yeah. Cause he's amazing at taking the complicated and the complex and making it very simple. So yeah, yes, I was being kind of sarcastic, but I too read anything that Kevin DeYoung writes. So.
Yes. I think we all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in trouble by the higher ups in the PCA. Okay, please.
Yeah. There are no higher.
I come in peace.
Yes. But Sinclair Ferguson, another name that's come up. Like if Sinclair writes it, I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to read it, because Sinclair is just such a gifted theologian, pastor. Just his writing is excellent. And
Dale Ralph Davis.
Dale Ralph Davis is absolutely one of my favorite Bible commentators. But then just anything that he touches is gold.
I know. So unfortunately, for me, fortunately for my church, but unfortunately for me, I'm preaching Samuel and the Psalms right now. So Samuel in the morning, Psalms in the evening, and he has commentaries on each. And it's just like so hard to not preach, just to not give them exactly everything he has. So, I love reading his stuff, and he brings it to life, and it's really faithful to the text.
His 1st and 2nd Samuel commentaries, we did that for small group last year.
Okay, yeah.
Those commentaries in particular are really, really good.
Yeah. Right. That's what I'm using right now.
So, well, Jonathan, thank you so much. We've taken a lot of your time, so I want to honor the fact that you've got sermons to write and kids to take care of. And
I have Dale Ralph Davis sermons to write.
Yes. But thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. We're looking forward to having you on more.
Thanks so much, Joe. Yeah, I can't wait to be back, and looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Yep.
At Twin Lakes.
I'll see you there. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks.
That does it for this episode of Take Up and Read. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel so that you can be a part of these discussions as they come out. Until next time, go enjoy a good book.